Hi, my name is Marina and welcome to my workspace. Today I'll be summarizing The Glass Castle as well as teaching conflict and imagery. Keep in mind that The Glass Castle is a memoir which was written by Jeanette Walls, the main character herself. So for the warm-up today, we will have to write a small paragraph describing the student's weekend using all 5 senses. And then the next slide, we do have the beautiful Walls family. And here we do have the locations where everything took place. So it does take place more on the west coast, where everything is more deserted and dried up, because that's how the Walls parents prefer it. So let's get into the parents first. Rex Walls, he does suffer from smoking addiction and alcoholism. Other than that, he's a great dad, but bad things do come with alcoholism. He is very abusive. He does choose to spend money on his alcohol over his children. He also does have a gambling addiction, and he did have a traumatic childhood, which doesn't justify how he treated his children. Then for Rosemary Walls, she's a beautiful woman. She is an artist and a teacher, but she chooses not to work because she hates teaching. She much rather do art and neglect her children and allow her abusive husband mentally abuse her children. So here we have the main character, Jeanette Walls. She is very sweet, kind, and I feel like she's very adventurous and curious. So she is a very deep character. Throughout the book, she was neglected by her parents, obviously like all her other siblings. So the book starts very interestingly, how she hides from her dad while she's in a taxi cab in New York, and her dad is going through the dumpsters, which actually does catches the reader's attention. It definitely did caught mine. And later on, it goes into her first memory, one of her first earliest memories, which was her cooking sausages for herself because her mom didn't want to, and she burned herself on the stomach. And in the hospital, they said that a child shouldn't be cooking for herself at such a young age, and the parents just didn't care. So then we have Lori and Brian. Brian was a lot like Jeanette and her father, Rex Walls, because he did love his children when he didn't drink. He was very educated, and he loved to play with his children. And Lori was more like her mother, but then in the book turns out that was because she couldn't see. She didn't like adventures because she was blind, and her parents didn't really believe in that until she was forced by a school to get glasses, and those glasses were paid for. Then she became more like Lori and Brian, and she started loving adventuring too, but she still remained more like her mom. Irma Walls. She is an interesting character, and she plays a big role in the whole story, even though she doesn't have that much of like a description in the book. So she is really evil, and I believe she's also racist, and she has anger issues. She also molested Brian, little kid, and when the children confronted her about it, Rex actually stepped in, and he said that he's a man and he needs to man up. Whatever happened, which I feel like is ridiculous. And that little thing told the reader how Rex was treated as a kid. He was most likely also molested and beaten and all of the negative things that you can imagine. But regardless of that generational trauma, Rex's children refuse to follow into it, and they actually do become more successful in their life later on. So that's pretty much about how the whole book goes. She just shares her stories about her childhood, and to put it into shorter words, she, when she was senior, I believe, she wanted to escape the home of Rex and Rosemary. And so she bought a piggy bank, she started saving up, and her and Lori eventually moved out. I believe it was one by one. I might be confusing that with the movie, but we'll see. And Brian moved out too, I believe, and Maureen had a huge grudge on them later on. So they do become successful in New York. Jeanette was a writer, which she worked really hard. She worked hard for scholarships and everything, but her dad was not supportive at first. I feel like he wanted to keep his children in the cage under control, and he wanted them to live according to his ways, which are better. So that's how they had a huge grudge on their parents. So let's see. The book ended after Rex passed away, and Gina finally stopped pretending and pushing away her identity. And so they all had a very nice get together, and they just more like a reunion and on Thanksgiving, and they just toasted, like they had a toast whatever, to Rex's stories, positive stories that they had with him after Rex died already. So let's get into our literally devices. Anyways, so for the conflict, I feel like we all know what conflict is, but on the slide we do have that the conflict is an element that involves struggle between two opposing forces, and it's usually protagonist and antagonist. And the types of conflict are actually, I found 5, which is men versus men, men versus nature, men versus himself, and men versus society. Examples of conflict in the Glass Castle. Rex's alcohol addiction, of course. I would like to mention that throughout the book, Gina had a wish for her birthday, which was for Rex to stop drinking. So he did. He had to tie himself to a bed, and he had a huge withdrawal, and everything seemed to be fine. And he had a job for a while. They were living a good life, but that did not last long. So that's why this is a man versus himself conflict. Second of all, we have the family moving around toward tax collectors. This is an interesting point as well, because I feel like this is a man versus society thing, because Rex, he had his own beliefs, and he didn't think that he had to pay the government or any of the companies for electricity and stuff. That was more of his mindset. Then we do have Irma assaulting Brian. There was actually different assaults mentioned in the book. Then there was Billy, a guy who assaulted Jeanette Walls when she was a kid. That was really evil of him, honestly. And he then, after she rejected him very much, he came to their house, to the Walls' house, and he had a gun, which was fake apparently, but the kids had a real gun, and they actually kicked him out. That's one reason that they had to move from that specific area. And Rosemary and Rex were always fighting. That's a man versus men thing as well. For the next slide, oh, nope. We do have this one right here, which I made. It says, give 3 examples of conflict from your book, which everybody had a book to read. That would probably also take a few minutes. What is imagery? Next step, we have imagery is a literary language that symbolizes and kind of like allows the reader to imagine what's going on in the book, and it does so by using the five senses. And to identify imagery, pay attention to the words that connect to your five senses. And here we have the types of imagery. I really wanted to focus. Okay, first one is visible, which is going to be color, shape, size. We do have a good example right here. Then we have auditory, which are like noises and music, basically hearing. Then we have tactile, which is like touch and temperature. Then we have olfactory, scent, fragrance, and odor, like smell. The last one is gustatory, which is flavors. And here we have another two types. First one is organic. Then phrases that make the reader feel elated, nostalgic, fearful, sad, hungry, tired, thirsty, and many more. Here's an example. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw him and she ran into his arms. So here we have her eyes lit up the moment she saw him. Like that kind of gives us a feeling that our eyes lit up, if that makes sense. For the next one, we have kinesthetic. Sorry, my pronunciation is very bad. And running her fingers on the sudden pages of the book, which gives us a feeling of running our fingers. And then we do have another question right here, which they would have written down. Write one example of organic imagery and one example of kinesthetic imagery. Then we do have pop quiz. The first three questions I don't know who made. I made the last one. So the first one would be, what was Rex Well's biggest issue? Then we have, what about the presentation shows conflict? And they would have to give a detailed response. Sorry. Then we have, why did Wall's family move around a lot? And then, who do you think the greatest antagonist of the book is? And for the exit ticket is a little bit too early, because let's see the assignment first. We do have it right here. I made that by myself. That would have been, in 2 short paragraphs, create a story according to this picture. Come up with a conflict the main character is facing. Then we do have like examples of the conflict. And then make sure to include at least 2 different types of imagery. I don't like that it's not focusing. Right here. Oops, I am very sorry. I have this really annoying thing. Okay, there you go. Then for the exit ticket, there you go. Sorry. What was your favorite part of this lesson? And what surprised you the most about the glass castle? One focus, sorry. And that was the end of it. And basically, yeah, I just wanted to show you what slides I made. I made the warm-up slide. I made Jeanette Wall's slide. Please. There you go. I made Irma Wall's slide. Then we have everything about conflict and imagery is also made by me. Then here I only added 1 question. So then the exit ticket is made by me, and this whole assignment is made by me as well. I will not take credit for anything else that was made, and I don't even know who it was made by. So I hope you liked it.